Hi, and welcome to Probeline. I'm your host, Reed Howie, and I want to thank the folks at the Thrift Shop for making this show possible and giving you the opportunity to get to know those folks who are running for office a little bit better. Today we have Rob Itner, who is running for Pitkin County Commissioner. Hi, Rob.
Reed, good to see you again.
Good to see you. Yeah. Welcome. Thanks for
taking
taking the time.
8 years ago we were here.
That's right. And you're back.
And I'm back.
Well, you're back. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running to be a Pitkin County Commissioner.
Yeah, so I'm running for Pitkin County Commissioner. I own a couple of restaurants here in town. I own Rustique, 19 years now. And I own the Cooking School of Aspen, which I opened up 3 years ago. A event venue cooking school space. And then I just recently did a fairly major remodel to a 1880s historic mining cabin in downtown Aspen for a project called the Cottage Aspen, where we do special events, farm-to-table dinners featuring a lot of the farms up and down the valley and over in Paonia. So primarily I'm a restaurateur and have been involved with food and beverage for a long time, but I moved to Aspen 20 years ago. Been very involved with the community from the very beginning. 15 years ago I was one of the founders of Aspen Young Professionals Association, which all had to do with quality of life for young professionals and maintaining that young professional work base here. I served as county commissioner from 2011 to 2015. For that period of time, for 1 year of that, I served as chair as the Board of County Commissioners. I was involved in the Northwest COG Development District, Environmental Development District. I serve as chair of that board as well. So I sit on the chair of ACRA, so I'm involved with a lot, and restaurant is kind of, as the restaurants have gotten older and steady and hiring good managers and managing good managers, I've taken more time for community stuff.
Great.
Yeah.
So what brings you back to the board? Why did you choose to invest in, I want to be a county commissioner again?
It is an amazing job. I mean, it really is kind of thrilling to be involved in the policy making of this area, in this community. I mean, we have such a unique and special community here in Pitkin County with our natural beauty, our lands. The type of people that come in here is either as second homeowners or want to retire here. The people that live and work in our community and the type of people that they are. So I think the best way to answer that is it is thrilling to be involved with being part of that board, making those decisions, driving the community in ways that the community wants to be driven.
Yeah, it is a chance to really have an influence over where things go, and how, in your sense, what does a commissioner do? What does a commissioner provide to us?
Well, here in Pitkin County, we have a 5 commissioners. 5 people sit on the board of county commissioners. And that board is the governing body that oversees the policy making for the county. There are a range of things that will influence, some of which are state influenced, so state mandates that have to be done, like health and human services, roads, those sorts of things, safety, public safety. So there needs to be a decision-making process for things to move forward, for dollars to be spent. So the way our government is set up, both from the most local level to the highest level, there needs to be some accountability. Some people say today there should be a little bit more accountability. But there needs to be a process. So we have public meetings where we get the information out. We try to get as much input as possible from people. Listening to the public is probably one of our most important jobs as county commissioner. And then there are decision trees that happen that you need to make a decision on which way you're going to move. Mm-hmm. Are we going to repair this road this year, or are we going to wait till next year to repair it? Those sorts of decisions have to be made by somebody, and there needs to be accountability, so therefore an elected office is the accountability for that.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned you'd like to do some things. What are some of the things that you think you'd like to accomplish as a county commissioner?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I think as a business owner, I have an insight to what's going on a daily basis with my employees' lives, the challenges that they are going through, what's going on from the economic balance of things. As I said before, I sit on the Aspen Chamber Resort Association board, so mainly an economic driving board for the Aspen area. So members go all the way down to Rifle in the ACRA board. So it's really interesting that I have an insight to see what's kind of happened over this 20-year period of time that I've been on. And just like being one of the founders of Aspen Young Professionals Association, I mentioned the word quality of life. And it's a kind of an encompassing word that I'm using, a company phrase that I'm using a lot to encompass a lot of different things. Quality of life is childcare, health and human services, the Healthy Community Fund, the ability to have a good job with a good wage, the ability to get to work, transportation issues. All of those things affect the quality of life here in Pitkin County. And I think of all the things that I want to really get involved with is looking at how quality of life has been affected by decisions that have been made and how it will be affected by decisions that get made in the future. I mean, because that really gets to the root of most things. The airport, noise quality at the airport. You know, how is that going to affect the quality of life that people live there? The economic benefit of the airport, how is that going to affect the quality of life of the people that live here? I was talking to someone just the other day that we were emailing back and forth, and she said, you know, there are only 16 spots of healthcare, of childcare in this valley. You know, we need more childcare. Like, how could you raise a family? And I said, yes, I totally understand that, but it's the housing issue and the wage issue for those people, which relates to the housing issue. And then it's the transportation issue, that the people that are in Basalt are no longer coming to Aspen or coming up here because of the traffic at the roundabout. So how do we support that sort of quality of life things? And, you know, being a business owner, having that view on a day-to-day basis from talking to my employees and customers and that sort of stuff, and having been in politics now for those 4 years, trust me, I didn't take a break the last 4 years. Everybody who comes into my restaurant who's a local is like, yeah, you ran and served us well as a Pitkin County commissioner. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? You know, so I haven't been not involved into hearing the community's voice.
Yeah. Well, how do you unpack some of those issues? You know, you mentioned quite rightly that childcare is connected to housing, which is connected to transportation, and it's difficult, I think, sometimes to find a discrete way to move forward. And what would that look like? Yeah. You know, what can the county do as a step for, say, housing?
Well, I think the words that you used are one of the most important keys to that. Steps to move forward. Yeah. You know, what is the decision-making tree of how we move forward? How do we get from point A to point Z with all of those little steps in between? Right. And that really takes an analytical mind, a CEO of somewhat, to say, how are we going to go about getting the information, deciding what the potential outcomes are, coming up with the decisions along the process. And I think of all the things that I contributed as a member of the Board of County Commissioners was having that analytical mind to come up with decision-making processes. Yeah. So that, I think, is one of the biggest things. Now, that doesn't address one particular issue, but that's a mindset and a skill set of having run a business for the last 20 years here. Yeah. And being able to, having to make decisions where the buck stops with you. If I'm not profitable, well, I'm out of business and I lose my house. You know, and there have been years where it's been, you know, on the edge with that, for sure. So that, first and foremost, I think is important. John Peacock, the county manager here in Pitkin County, who I think is doing an excellent job. Yes. I was just elected when the hiring process was happening. So I was invited as a county commissioner electee, elect, to be part of the hiring committee with him. And one of the things that he brought as a county commissioner, not as a county commissioner, sorry, as a county manager, was that need in that thing and just talking about it. So I was new to government at that time. So he said something to me that stuck in my mind, which is governing is a combination of two things. You have to come to the table with passion about what you believe and what you believe the community believes. And you have to come to the table with information and an analytical thought process to get that done. Mm-hmm. You have to have both. You're not going to get to the end line with just the passion. The person who sits down at the table who says, I've already made up my mind on this, is not going to do the best for the community. So that stuck with my mind, and having that balance of things. I love our community. I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about protecting the environment. I'm a big outdoors person. But I also have that analytical thought process of how do we make this decision? How do we move forward with things? Right. And I think that's a really important thing when we're contemplating spending $400 million on the airport to achieve community goals. Now, don't get me wrong, the FAA has a big part of spending that $400 million, but it will be driven by achieving the community goals. Now, the community goals are the passion behind it. The spending that money, or not spending that money, as may be the case in some outcomes, is the analytical process of how that comes. And I tell you, there's pages and pages and pages of spreadsheets and documents and all that stuff. And it's challenging to go through, but you have to spend the time on that as much as you spend the time on, we don't want any more noise.
Right.
So it's both pieces.
Yeah, what's the passion part of the airport? You mentioned noise, but other people talk sometimes about how it intersects with our beliefs about growth and how much we want to grow and environmental issues around it.
Yeah. We'll probably talk more. I'll talk about the airport thing. We'll probably talk more about the growth thing, because I think that comes down to the heart of a lot of the decision-making processes.
It's the lens through which we see a lot of things.
But it's the lens to realize that governing is making decisions and balances. It's not saying yes or no. And I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that would say, no, it's saying yes or no. I would argue a little bit that passion is great, but you need to have all the information on how that yes and no affects various things. I would love to be in a carbon-free environment. Yeah. Great. You can take your horse to work tomorrow.
Well, there's the methane gas problem.
There's, all of those things, exactly, with the horse. But the point is, it's great to say I'm for education. Right. I think we need to be supporting our schools here more, no question. But where do we find that balance with things? And the people that are sitting at the table that aren't answering those questions or thinking about it that way aren't doing their jobs to the fullest. Yeah. Because that's really what's important. So growth is the big issue. But back to what the original question was, is the airport. Like, what is the issue with the airport? I met with John Kenny yesterday morning, the airport director, and had a conversation about everything that was going on there. And then I went to the Maroon Creek Caucus last night. They had a meeting and a similar presentation on the airport from John Peacock and some of the PR. We're in the first stage of determining the design aspects of how we move forward. We've gotten an FAA grant to conduct the information portion of our study. Someone in the audience made an interesting comment, said, just to be clear, the Board of County Commissioners is going to be a decision-making process where they will actually vote. Is it a possible outcome for keep the existing airport the way it is? The answer to that is yes, that is a possible outcome. And her next question was, if everybody was in favor of that, would you do that? And I told John just a few minutes ago, I met with John Peacock this afternoon as well. I told John, you should have just said yes to that. I know you can't, but I could pretty much bet you the winning lottery ticket that not everybody in this community is going to say,
Right.
let's keep it that way. That's the problem. Half of, a portion of our community says this is an economic growth piece. A portion of this community says we're big enough and we don't need to grow anymore, or let's get rid of the airport, or whatever their desired outcome is. The most challenging job the county commissioner has is finding that balance between both and making a decision of saying this is the best thing for the community.
Yeah.
But the most important aspect of that job as well is it's a temp job. So you don't get to keep it forever, and you shouldn't be in office forever. So,
Yeah. So, do you think the airport is the greatest challenge that the county has going forward, or?
Well, I mentioned to you before, I think quality of life is the greatest challenge.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of stuff that encompasses under there, but we are hearing more and more that the housing issue has become, great. Our encroaching on environment is part of quality of life. The health and human services aspect, getting mental health in this community, that to me is, and I recognize the fact that it encompasses a lot, but I think
Right.
it really should be a catchphrase along with mind, body, spirit that we use here all the time, that we should strive for the best quality of life for our citizens here. Yes, the airport is an important issue that is on the table right now,
Right.
so it's definitely an issue in the campaign and in this political season.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very much so. So, Rob, what do you bring to the commission that's not already there?
Should I say answer A, which we talked about a little bit?
Well,
I mean,
it
to
is,
me,
yeah.
that's the big piece. I mean, the big piece is, owning a business, having employees, making decisions where my dollars are on the line. I mean, as much as I respect and appreciate the hard work that every one of my employee puts in to make my business successful, they're my most valuable assets. They don't make the decisions that I make.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's running a several $1 million business or a, $100+ million budget, with the county, that sort of thought process is very important when a county administrator comes to you and says, this is what I think you should do. I think one of the biggest things that I hear more often than not on the streets is the tail is wagging the dog. Whether they're talking about the city or the county, but there's always this impression the tail is wagging the dog. That the county the FAA is talking to the county to make the airport happen, and then the county administration is recommending these elected officials that they should do this. Well, that's always going to happen to some extent. You can't take the human out of the county administrator. They're going to have their own agenda, and they're going to try to be as non-biased as possible. But it's the process of having an analytical mind that works against that. The person that says, well, why are you doing that? Or why do you recommend that? And what's the outcome if this happens? Can we analyze the numbers this way? Or what do you think about this? As opposed to just hearing, this is good for the community.
Right.
I'm for education. I kind of tout that as have you ever seen a politician say, I don't want any education. We don't want to educate our people.
Right.
So
it's a waste of money.
The point is to what level, how you're going to do it, how you accomplish it, and how you direct staff to do it. We were talking earlier that some counties have county commissioners that actually are the administration heads for various
Right.
departments. Here in Pitkin County, we have an elected board where our home rule charter basically says we direct staff. So through hiring the county manager, the county attorney, we direct staff to the wills of the county commissioners. But the reality is it is the staff that is finding the projects and bringing them to us.
Yeah.
The staff says, we don't have enough county space in our building. We need a new county building. Okay, great, come up with a plan. The staff comes up with a plan. I want a 12 square foot office, or I want a 20 square foot office. They're imparting that. And they built a beautiful building, and they did it, pretty much on budget, from my understanding. I haven't analyzed the numbers, Philly. But the point is, this is just one example of the staff are making those recommendations. The county commissioners are reading the packets that the staff are presenting. You ever seen those, I think it was like SAE tests where you can have a graph that goes like this, that presents a certain amount of data. The same graph can go like this and present the exact same data. Well, one looks positive and one looks negative, but it's presenting the data the same way. So, those things happen. And having someone who's sitting at the table, asking the hard questions, having their mind work in an analytical way where you're coming up with decision tree processes to make hopefully the right decision.
So the tail wagging the dog part
Yeah.
is the difficulty of being a county commissioner fed, for lack of a better word, a whole lot of information and agendas that are somewhat defined by the staff.
Yeah.
Then how does the commission get into a leadership position with that? And you're saying being analytical.
Yeah, well, asking questions, asking for information, driving the conversation, as opposed to being passive in the conversation.
Right. But where do you get your inputs then, beyond the staff?
Well, the community.
Yeah.
Certainly the community. I mean, there are generally interest groups. So you look at interest groups and how they present their information. The person that didn't want any development at the airport that said, if everybody voted no, would you not build it?
Right.
Yeah, if everybody voted no, if everybody in Pitkin County votes no to not change a brick at the airport, I will not vote for it.
Yeah.
I don't think I guarantee you I will not vote for it if everybody says no, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Right.
So you have people that are involved. This is a very involved community. But how you interpret, read, decipher that information. It's funny, during the campaign process, there are a lot of people that will come to you and they'll argue their points on a ballot question or this or that. And the first mindset is to say, hey, you're right. That sounds good. I'm for education. It's that mantra again. That sounds good. It totally makes sense. But they're not presenting the other person's opposition. So again, that's the ability to put that information together, to get staff to get the facts, and to move forward on what that is.
Yeah. Well, if you were emperor,
well, yeah,
what would it look like? I hear and I understand that you're saying be analytical, take in information. You have to balance all this stuff. But I think folks would like to hear a little bit about what your passion or personal beliefs are for the quality of life and what that means.
Yeah, I mean, quality of life means that we need to look at figuring out where our deficits are in those quality of life and how we can actually help them without damaging other areas with the county in negative ways. So, things come at a cost. I mean, I'm all in favor of certain people paying more of their share to subsidize what's going on here. I mean, things like employee housing right now, which as an employer, trust me, I know. I've searched numerous times to bring employees in here and have given up the effort because of the housing factor. I think the mitigation fees for employee housing in the county and in the city, although I'm running for county office, should be higher. I think those formulas need to be relooked at for new development and how we mitigate for employee housing. We are not doing enough to service our community in those areas. I think the same thing should be part of things like this Healthy Community Fund mill levy increase. We have a great community, but we need to serve the people that live and work here, and that Healthy Community Fund does that. I think the RAFTA tax that we're thinking about. I'm in favor of that. I think we are looking at not only a diminishing employee base because of the cost of living in Aspen, but we're looking at a diminishing employee base because we are competing with Carbondale and Glenwood Springs now. Now with the new bridge in Glenwood Springs, the new downtown development down there, the growth in their mall areas, we're competing with the employees for the people down, with the businesses down there. So RAFTA is one of the biggest things that will help that, having good quality of bus service that comes up and down the valley.
Great. We have a few minutes left. Let's imagine you're successfully elected. It's 4 years in the future. We're doing another Probeline, and my wheelchair has been brought up to do that. And what do you want to look back and be most proud of, you think, in those 4 years?
I think I would be most proud of bringing that conversation of quality of life to the table and getting the community involved. Having them not only communicate where the deficits are and start to address those, but to also be communicated back to in a way that they can start to understand why decisions are being made. I think that's a piece that's missing. It's why are we doing this airport?
Right.
And communicating that. I think there's good public relationships with the county. I think the Board of County Commissioners manages with a lot of passion or oversees with a lot of passion. Bringing in that analytical data to things, will help in that process. I think that's a big piece of it. I mean, we're seeing rental units going through the roof for people that live here. We're seeing we need to find a way to keep our elderly aging in place. These things all come with a cost to the community. And the interesting piece of the puzzle that's hard with that is a lot of them have pretty dramatic inflationary aspects, which just make it more difficult.
Yeah.
I talked in front of City Council, I kind of mentioned the $35 burger is coming soon. If we don't support this RAFTA tax, and I'm all for higher wages for everybody in Aspen, but businesses have to find a balance.
Yes.
We will have to pay employees more because we're competing with Down Valley and it's harder for them to get up here, which of course we pay our employees more every year anyway. But all of a sudden, my business is making less money. I can't afford that. I'm not the big bad business owner that's profiteering off of what I do. We start to raise our prices.
Right.
And who gets hurt most of that? The people that don't have money. The person that lives on Red Mountain doesn't worry about a $35 burger. The person who's a Lyft operator is no longer going to go out and eat burgers in town.
We just have a few seconds left. Anything quickly that I didn't give you a chance to talk about that you want to mention, or?
Well, we should mention mail ballots go out next week. It's primarily a mail ballot. You can get your ballots in the county clerk's office if you'd like, and you can vote in person if you'd like at various places. And the election is November 6th, so I ask you all for your vote.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
That concludes another session of Probeline. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to the good folks at the Thrift Shop for sponsoring this, and thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Reed.